This is Land of Havilah, Zechariah 4. Coming up in verse 1, Zechariah's long night vision will go into another phase. This time he'll see a menorah hooked up by piping to 2 olive trees. Oil will flow continually from the olive trees through the piping into a bowl, and from there by more piping to the 7 lamps of the menorah. This contraption will give the menorah an unending source of oil. Verse 1. The angel who talked with me came again and wakened me, as a man who is wakened out of his sleep. Comment: Zechariah says the angel wakened him, but it was still a dream. He dreamed the angel woke him. Speaking of that angel, verse 2, he said to me, "What do you see?" I said, "I have seen, and behold, a lampstand of all gold, with its bowl on the top of it, and its 7 lamps on it. There are 7 pipes to each of the lamps which are on the top of it, and 2 olive trees by it, one on the right side of the bowl and the other on the left side of it." I answered and spoke to the angel who talked with me, saying, "What are these, my Lord?" Then the angel who talked with me answered me, "Don't you know what these are?" I said, "No, my Lord." Then he answered and spoke to me, saying, "This is Yahweh's word to Zerubbabel, saying, Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says Yahweh of armies." Comment: Zerubbabel's governor of Judah. He's descended from David and from all the Judean kings after David. No doubt the Jews would anoint Zerubbabel king if it weren't for the fact that Darius the Persian is king and Judah's not independent. They're not able to choose a king. The 2 olive trees are producing oil for the menorah. It's quite a contraption that Zechariah is seeing. The way the piping is set up, the lamps of the menorah will never run dry. There'll be continual light because the trees are constantly producing olives, which are constantly producing oil. There's piping from the trees to a bowl. There's piping from the bowl to each of the 7 lamps of the menorah. The lamps will never go out. It's powered by Yahweh. The meaning of this contraption is that it's a message for Zerubbabel that, quote, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord." The implication here, and from what's about to follow, is that Zerubbabel's been worried he's not up to the task of building the temple. He's figuring maybe it's too much for him. But according to Yahweh, it's not going to be all that strenuous on him. The temple won't be completed by any man's might or power, but by the fact that God has determined it, and that men, by understanding the plan of God and participating in that plan, will be successful in that plan. Zerubbabel can accomplish everything by walking in the light of God, and that light will never go out. When Yahweh commanded Moses to build the first menorah, he said the purpose of it would be, quote, "to shed light on the space in front of it," Exodus 25:37. The menorah represents the light of God's revelation so that we can see a situation clearly and understand how to participate in things God's way, which is the only way it's going to work. Jesus said, "My yoke is easy and my burden light," Matthew 11:30. That's because God's way is the slickest and smoothest way to do anything and everything. When we're in His will, He makes things happen. Coming up, the angel is still quoting Yahweh. Yahweh says, verse 7, "Who are you, great mountain? Before Zerubbabel you are a plain, and he will bring out the capstone with shouts of grace, grace to it." Moreover, Yahweh's word came to me, saying, "The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. His hands shall also finish it, and you will know that Yahweh of armies has sent me to you." Comment: when they laid the foundation of the temple 15 years previously, they had a great groundbreaking ceremony described in Ezra chapter 3. They were all there, Zerubbabel, Joshua, and a great crowd of people. The priests and Levites were singing and playing. When the crowd saw the foundation being laid, they shouted with joy, but it was even more emotional for the oldest among them. They remembered Solomon's temple and it being destroyed, never thinking in all the following years of captivity they'd go back to the land and see the temple being built again in the same location, so the older ones were weeping and wailing about it. The sound of the rejoicing together with the sound of the wailing was so loud it was heard far away. Yahweh remembered that event. In verse 9, he said, "Zerubbabel was there at the beginning, and he'll be there at the end. He'll bring out the capstone." The temple will be finished, in other words. On that day, Yahweh says, there'll be great shouting again. When the people see the capstone, they'll shout, "Grace, grace to it," in verse 7. In verse 7, Yahweh says, "Before Zerubbabel, a mountain is a plain." In other words, Zerubbabel can do anything if Yahweh's in it. A mountainous task is nothing to him. And we might add, it's nothing to any of us being led by the Spirit of God and keeping faith in Him. Verse 10, Indeed, who despises the day of small things? For these 7 shall rejoice and shall see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. These are Yahweh's eyes which run back and forth through the whole earth. Comment, Yahweh sees everything through the whole earth as if He has 7 eyes. His 7 eyes shall rejoice, meaning Yahweh will rejoice when He sees the day Zerubbabel completes the temple. And in verse 10, who despises the day of small things? In other words, we shouldn't scoff at a shaky start. We shouldn't be afraid to start with a small step. If God's in an effort, the fruits of that effort will get bigger and better until everyone involved will be vindicated. Coming up, Zechariah has a question about the 2 trees. He asks his angel guide, verse 11, Then I asked him, What are these 2 olive trees on the right side of the lampstand and on the left of it? I asked him the second time, What are these 2 olive branches which are beside the 2 golden spouts that pour the golden oil out of themselves? He answered me, Don't you know what these are? I said, No, my Lord. Comment, the angel surprised that Zechariah doesn't understand the 2 olive trees and the piping from them pouring out golden oil. The angel will explain. Verse 14. Then he said, These are the 2 anointed ones who stand by the Lord of the whole earth. Comment, the literal translation here is that the 2 trees are the 2 sons of oil who stand by the Lord of the whole earth. That's the last verse of this phase of the vision, so there'll be no more elaboration on it as far as there'll be no names given to identify these 2 sons of oil any further. But obviously right now in Israel, the sons of oil are Zerubbabel the governor and Joshua the high priest. They're sons of oil because they're walking by the light of Yahweh's oil, guiding Israel, and in the future there'll be replacement leaders, which is why the verse doesn't name names, because there'll be many men standing in those offices in the future. The Apostle John introduced another aspect of this metaphor of the trees, using language straight from this chapter, that in the Great Tribulation, the 2 witnesses will be the 2 olive trees. The 2 of them will stand on the earth, channeling God's light for the world for whoever might accept it. John says of the witnesses, quote, These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the Lord of the earth, Revelation 11:4. In other words, they're shedding God's light on the earth as prophets during that time. He also used language out of this chapter when he said, quote, The Lamb had 7 horns and eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth, Revelation 5:6. In other words, the Lamb, which is Jesus, will see what's going on during the tribulation, and he'll have horns, which is power, to do whatever he wants in the earth. He'll go forth as 7 spirits, meaning he'll have universal coverage of the situation, omnipresence in the earth. Proverbs 15:3, quote, The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good. Zechariah 5 is next.